Okay, important individuals economically in the 2000s. First one up, Alan Greenspan. Alan Greenspan was the chairman of the Federal Reserve from 1987 until 2006. In 2000, he increased interest rates, causing the dot-com bubble to burst, which was huge. Greenspan was in favor of Bush's 2001 tax cuts, claiming that the federal surplus could sustain it. After 9/11, Greenspan made significant interest rate cuts, bringing federal funds rate to 1%, which ultimately caused the housing bubble to form later on. Second one up, Bernard Madoff. He was the former non-executive chairman of the Nasdaq. He began a Ponzi scheme, which went on until his arrest in 2008. Madoff stole more than $18 billion from investors and was sentenced to 150 years in prison. This event shook investors' confidence in the market security. Okay, these three guys, Jeffrey Skilling, Kenneth Lay, and Andrew Fastow, were all part of the huge Enron scandal. Jeffrey Skilling used a team of executives to find accounting loopholes, making the company able to hide billions of dollars in debt from its shareholders. When Enron stocks suddenly plummeted from $90.75 per share to $1 per share, shareholders sued Enron for over $40 billion. This caused Enron to file for bankruptcy, making it the largest corporate bankruptcy in American history until WorldCom the next year. Skilling, Lay, and Fastow were all arrested. One good thing that came out of this was the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which we'll talk about later. Okay, George W. Bush, our 43rd president, from 2001 to 2009. He led the country through two recessions in 2001 and another one spanning from 2007 to 2009. He used tax cuts to stimulate the economy and create jobs. He approved a $1.35 trillion tax cut in 2001, doubled defense spending from 2001 to 2008. This was due to 9/11 and the 2003 invasion of Iraq. He accumulated massive debt because of the tax cuts, and the national debt in 2000 was 3.4 trillion, and in 2008 it accumulated to 5.8 trillion. Okay, the last important individual is Paul Krugman, and he was basically a very influential economist in the New World, and he contributed to new trade theory and new economic geography. He was awarded the Nobel Prize for his efforts and influentiality in the new economic world. Okay, to kind of explain these pictures that I have here, this one is in a New York magazine. This is Bernie Madoff, and he's depicted as like a monster because he stole all of the money from his shareholders. And this one is, Enron is a Texas-based company, so it's Texas Hold'em because they're being held in a cell. And this is the CEO, and this is Skilling, who kind of helped with the scandal. Okay, now we're going to talk about some government policies instituted in the 2000s. The first one is the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. It was a U.S. federal law that was passed in the 2000s as a reaction to the numerous corporate scandals, such as Enron and WorldCom. This law expanded responsibilities of the corporation's board of directors, add criminal penalties for fraud and other misconduct, and allow the SEC to create regulations for public corporations. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the Bush tax cuts, the first of which is the Economic Growth and Tax Relief Reconciliation Act of 2001. This legislation implemented by Bush changed U.S. Internal Revenue Code by lowering tax rates and also simplifying retirement plans like 401ks, 403bs, and pension plans. The second Bush tax cut, which is the Jobs and Growth Tax Relief Reconciliation Act of 2003, was used to accelerate the tax changes of the previous and also lower taxes of income from dividends and capital gains, and ultimately increase tax deductions from small businesses. Okay, now we're going to skip to 2009 when Barack Obama instituted the Credit Card Act, which basically established fair and transparent practices relating to credit and also offered open-ended consumer credit plans. Okay, now moving on to another federal law that was signed by Barack Obama. This is the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. Basically, this was in response to the 2007 to 2009 recession, and it brought financial regulations such as improved accountability and transparency in financial systems, and also protected consumers from abusive financial services practices. The Economic Stimulus Act of 2008. This was an act of Congress used to boost U.S. economy in 2008 to avoid a recession. This provided tax rebates to lower and middle class taxpayers and also increased limits imposed on mortgages. So another recovery act used to combat the recession from 2007 to 2009. This is the Housing and Economic Recovery Act of 2008. This was used to address the subprime mortgage crisis. It was intended to restore confidence by strengthening regulations and giving up to $300 billion to large suppliers of mortgage funding. So the final government policy we're going to talk about is the Bankruptcy Abuse Prevention and Consumer Protection Act. This act was used to change the U.S. Bankruptcy Code, and it made it more difficult for consumers to file bankruptcy. Okay, finally we're going to look at the pictures. This first one is just a CEO opening up a briefcase, and it's titled the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. And basically all these SEC agents are coming out of the briefcase and like searching through all of his files. This next one is entitled A Perfect Storm, and here's the housing market, and it's being bombarded by foreclosures and subprime loans. Okay, now we're going to go over economic policies put in place in the 2000s. So we already covered some of this, but as we know, Bush imposed large tax cuts to stimulate the economy and also, in turn, racked up a bunch of federal debt. After 9/11, Bush increased defense funding by a huge amount. He improved homeland security and also spent trillions overseas in the fight against terrorism. As we know, government spending drives economic growth. Both Bush and Obama used deficit spending to kickstart the economy and create jobs to lower unemployment. Under Bush, we saw a free trade policy with foreign nations. This is basically when you have no restrictions on imports from and exports to other countries. In the 2000s, we saw that the federal regulations for banking sectors were very lenient until major scandals like Madoff's Ponzi scheme and Enron happened. Also, loose regulations caused the housing bubble to form, which put us in a recession starting in 2007 and ending in 2009. Throughout the 2000s and his presidency, Bush made many attempts to privatize Social Security, but ultimately failed. And in this time, we saw many companies outsourcing factories and American jobs to foreign countries. This was because of the increase in efficiency and the lower cost of labor. So now we're going to take a look at our pictures. This first one is Obama just riding the deficit upwards, and he's taking Uncle Sam, which represents America, with him, saying up and away. The second one is Bush basically sitting on a huge amount of debt, and this is, on the back of America, which is represented by Uncle Sam here. And he says he's on top of the situation, and basically these war costs and rich tax cuts are just adding to the debt. Alright, now we're going to talk about the important companies and corporations in the 2000s. First, we're going to start with Time Warner and AOL. And basically, Time Warner and AOL had a failed merger that cost billions and billions of dollars. It was a huge failure. Enron and WorldCom were both caught up in huge scandals, and both went bankrupt. WorldCom was the largest bankruptcy in U.S. history. Amazon and eBay were both huge companies during the dot-com bubble, and were two of the few that survived afterwards. And finally, NASDAQ. This is a major stock exchange, and it became one of the largest in the world due to its market capitalization. And now we're going to finally talk about the pictures. This is just the Time Warner Cable logo, and this picture is basically Enron cooking the books, which is, finding accounting loopholes, hiding their debt. And this is Arthur Andersen, who is, burning all the documents which happened during the scandal.